Start. Good evening and welcome to the North Metro Mayors Association, Brooklyn Park, Brooklyn Center Legislative Candidate Forum. Thank you all for joining us tonight, those of you here in the City Hall chambers and those watching on cable later or tonight. My name is Bob Benke. I'm a former mayor of New Brighton and a board member of the North Metro Mayors Association. And presently, I serve as the Director of Research and Advocacy Services for the association. The North Metro Mayors Association was created in 1987 as a nonpartisan organization advocating for issues and opportunities of importance to northern suburbs in the Twin Cities. I'd also like to thank the Twin West Chamber of Commerce for partnering with us on today's forum. Our goal in sponsoring tonight's Legislative Candidate Forum for House Districts 40A and 40B is to provide citizens with the opportunity to learn about candidates, their ideas and positions on issues that we believe are important to the future of our communities. Tonight we'll have two rounds, one for each district. We'll pose 5 prepared questions and we'll have responses in rotating order with set time on the answers. We'll note that these limits are maximums and not minimums. We regret we cannot cover all issues of interest tonight due to time constraints. We will focus on city and state governance, transportation, and finance issues. We expect that there will be more forums where other issues will be addressed. We will solicit audience questions. We'll use as many of those as time permits. We'll have cards circulating, so we'd ask that you write your questions on the note cards and give them to the North Metro Mayor staff that are in front of us. And please refrain from asking for responses from specific candidates, because we'll give each candidate an opportunity to speak. I'm pleased to introduce the candidates tonight. First, representing or seeking election in 40B is Robert Marvin. His opponent could not be here tonight, so we'll give him an opportunity to make an opening statement, and then we'll run through the questions with him. Following that, we'll take a quick break, and then we'll have the other candidates for the other district to come back and to go through those questions as well. So we'll turn the mic over to Robert Marvin, candidate for the House of Representatives.
All righty. Thank you, Bob. Thanks for hosting or being moderator for this, and thanks to the the North Metro Mayors Association and the Twin West Chamber of Commerce for hosting this forum. I hope this is a great dialogue, and I hope people can learn from it. My name is Robert Marvin. I'm running for Minnesota House in District 40B, which is Brooklyn Center and 3 precincts in Brooklyn Park. I've lived in the community for 22 years with my wife, Molly Marvin, and we have 3 sons. And we ran for office 2 years ago. I ran for Senate, my wife ran for House, and she was running up against the incumbent Deborah Hillstrom, who stepped down to run for Attorney General this time around. So this time it's an open seat. The reason I'm running for office is because I love this community, and I really think that we need to have somebody step up and help fight for our community. Our city really has been suffering a lot under a lot of issues. I've been an active member of my community now for most of my 22 years that I've lived here. I was a volunteer for the Cub Scouts, volunteer for the Boy Scouts, volunteer for Junior Achievement. I did all kinds of stuff with the schools. I was a soccer coach. One time in particular, my wife signed me up to be the assistant soccer coach for all 3 of my kids, and I show up to be the assistant soccer coach, and all 3 of the people said, "Well, there isn't a coach, so you're the coach." And I wound up being coach for 3 kids' soccer teams at the same time, and that was brutal. Basically, the reason I'm running for office here is because I care about the community, and I'm looking to fight for it. And I'm hoping that I've been out door knocking. I knock on all the doors. I talk to everybody, and I really care about the community, and I want to step up to help represent the community here in Brooklyn Center, Brooklyn Park. Thank you.
Thank you. At this time, we'll go to our prepared questions, which you did have ahead of time. And the first question is, what are the top 1 or 2 issues you hear about while campaigning? And if elected, what will you do to work in a collaborative way to address those issues?
Well, that's really kind of a tough question when you're talking about what are your top couple, because when you I've been talking to a lot of people, thousands of people, and everybody you talk to has a different thing. But basically, I think what people generally want is they want people to fight for us. And they want people, because they're electing a state house rep to represent Brooklyn Center, Brooklyn Park. And they're not looking to necessarily hire somebody to go out and represent, some other group. They're looking for people to fight for them. And they want us to fight for them in terms of taxes. They want for people to fight for them in terms of keeping the spending under control and to fight for education for their kids. They want to fight for public safety, and they also want to fight for health care. Brooklyn Center especially has some of the highest tax rates in all of the Hennepin County metro area, and we've also got some of the lowest property values. And we need to be bringing in investment. We need to be working on bringing in entrepreneurs and so forth to hire our people, bringing in jobs. We need to be fighting for our communities. As far as education, for example, we should really be working on trying to get better education and better training for our children, especially the ones who are going to college, making sure, because a lot of times these kids it's not necessarily their best option is to go to college. They might very well be better off going to trade school. I think these PSEO options are really great options. My youngest son got 2 years of PSEO when he was in high school, and basically he got 1 full year off of his University of Minnesota because of that. So it really saved us a lot of money, and it got him ahead. Thank you.
Thank you. The next question is transportation related. Both parties agree that increased funding is needed for road and transit system improvements. How would you propose those funds be raised?
Well, this is a good question. This is a tough question, actually. I ended up getting primers on this one from a lot of people currently in the House because there's a lot of interest in it. A lot of our residents are big on highway funding and so forth, too. We got a lot of big roads that go through our community. We got Highway 100, we got 252, we got Interstate 94, we got 694. We've also got issues where in Brooklyn Park, especially, they're talking about putting light rail through. If you go through and look at it, they're talking about all kinds of needs to reduce congestion, to deal with roadway crossings, for example, with the railroads. They're looking to figure out ways to separate the railroad crossings from roadway to basically reduce congestion. And as far as the funding goes, I basically believe that Minnesota doesn't have a revenue problem so much as they have a spending problem. And so I'm not looking necessarily to raise your taxes to deal with this kind of stuff, but I think there's a lot of solutions where you can get money from various sources. Like, for example, 2 years ago, they got a lot of the revenue for this from bonding was an option. They also got it from redirecting sales taxes that were for roadway related type stuff like there's a variety of roadway stuff that would come in on the sales tax. Another thing about funding for roads and bridges and infrastructure is we can try to keep them from rating the fund for things that aren't necessarily statutory. For example, there's actually quite a few kind of creative solutions like getting a large amount of money, like dealing with this Petro Fund, for example, where they've been taking money that's really by the Constitution supposed to go to this kind of spending, and it's being used for something else. So I think there's a lot of ways we can get money for roads and bridges, and we don't necessarily have to raise taxes. Thank you.
Thank you. The next question. What should be the role of the Metropolitan Council in guiding policy development in the North Metro area?
Thank you. Met Council, to me, basically the solution to the Met Council is to get rid of it. I think the Met Council, I understand the idea of having central planning and all that. There's a lot of functions of the Met Council that are really important. There's a lot of statutory stuff where there's funding that comes from federal governments and stuff based on certain calculations and certain. I don't really understand all the deals, but basically they explained it to me that there is legitimate functions that the Met Council serves. The problem with the Met Council is this big behemoth that basically covers the 7-county metro area, and there's 3.5 million people that live in there, and they're being controlled basically by this unelected body that has 17 members that all comes from the governor, And we basically, and they don't represent us. They're not accountable to us. They're based regionally, and we don't have any kind of elections or appointments to each of those various regions. So the people don't necessarily have any way of controlling these members. And I basically think that the Met Council should be turned over to local control. I basically believe the mayors and city councils of Brooklyn Center and Brooklyn Park have better understanding of what their needs are in terms of development and stuff. I don't like the idea that the Met Council comes in and operates like Big Brother and tells people that you can't build you can't build less than 3 houses on an acre, and they control development. They control all kinds of stuff. And they're basically repressing our communities. And then they're also driving all kinds of initiatives here that, like, for example, affordable housing. They're pressing large amounts of concentration of that into our communities, when realistically we should be working on bringing affordable housing everywhere and not just concentrating it in certain places. Thank you.
The next question deals with business property taxes. Minnesota's business property taxes are among the highest in the nation. What would you do at the legislature to address this issue?
Well, that's a good question, especially for Brooklyn Center. Brooklyn Center being some of the highest taxed city in the entire metro. I think there's like 80 cities, and Brooklyn Center consistently is in the top. And one of the accomplishments they brag about is how their tax rates didn't go up by as much as they could have, which to me is kind of a bad thing. To me, we should be working hard to keep down our taxes in Brooklyn Center, Brooklyn Park, and we also have some of the highest taxes in the state here in Minnesota, and we need to be able to compete with the neighboring communities, the neighboring states, North Dakota, South Dakota, Wisconsin. We're right next to these places, and we have to effectively be able to compete with them and attract businesses to our area. Minnesota is a lot of times known for being kind of hostile, and especially in terms of regulatory stuff. One of my relatives famously basically said they wouldn't build anything in this state anymore because of all of the environmental regulations and stuff that they were hammering on them in terms of their developments up north. And the thing is we should be trying hard to be friendly, to be competitive, and working hard to attract businesses. And we should also be working hard to make sure that we have the best labor forces as far as training and stuff, and make sure that we're doing training for trade schools and for college, and making sure that we have really good workforces. And if you look at it realistically, Brooklyn Center, Brooklyn Park have an enormous resource here in terms of labor force and people that could be working in all these various businesses. And we should really be striving hard to make things better for our residents here in Brooklyn Center, Brooklyn Park. Thank you.
Thank you. The next question. Your community is part of not just a regional or national marketplace, but a global one that competes for business and talent on a global basis. What policies would you support to help retain and attract businesses and talent to this region?
That's a good question. I think I was almost talking about that one here the last time around. But basically, we're part of a global marketplace, and we got to compete. So I know my wife's originally from China, and I ended up getting kind of asked to help a lot with the trade office, the Chinese MTO office, and the trade office in St. Paul when Jesse Ventura was the governor. And one of the things that Jesse Ventura did as a governor that really, really helped Minnesota is he kind of acted like a president. And he's this big bodybuilder guy, and a lot of these other countries, Japanese and the Chinese especially, looked at this guy like he's the president of kind of like one of their governors, And so I ended up getting to meet a bunch of governors from China, and I helped out with some of their big delegations. We had huge delegations of Chinese that came to my house, bus loads literally, and and the thing, you got all these guys in suits and stuff, and they're high-ranking people. And I live on a lake in Brooklyn Center, and so they it's kind of funny, you get all these guys that don't speak English, and they all decided they're going to go to the end of my dock and literally there was like 40 of them on the end of my dock, and I was sitting here thinking to myself, we're going to have an incident, international incident with all these people and my dock collapsing and falling in. But I think there's a lot of things that you can do as a legislator or as a governor, to fight with to fight for soybeans, to fight for exports of products that we're manufacturing here locally, and trying to compete and trying to fight for our local. And basically, to me, it's all about fighting for Brooklyn Center, Brooklyn Park. I know a lot of people get elected and they want to just fight for their party or whatever. I would be elected and I'd be fighting for the people here in Brooklyn Center, Brooklyn Park.
Thank you. That's the end of our prepared questions. We do have some time for questions from the audience. Do we have a few cards available?
Tough ones.
Thank you. Do you support reform that would have local elected officials serving on the Metro Council? If not, what reforms would you propose? Like you started to address.
Well, I think I kind of suggested that. My idea on how long do we have for those?
Maximum of 2 minutes.
Okay. So anyway, as far as the Met Council goes, I basically think that it's a complicated issue, and I think there's a lot of functions of the Met Council that could be better served in terms of smaller organizations. I basically think the Met Council should go back to its core function of sewer, right? The Met Council is all about sewer and operating the sewer system. And I don't think the Met Council should be allowed. What was the question again? I'm going off on a tangent there.
Yes. Do you support reform that would have local elected officials serving on the Metro Council? If not, what reforms would you propose?
Well, my thing is to bust up the Met Council into a bunch of smaller organizations. And I would support the idea of our local cities electing people to those various regions. There's 17 regions, because to me, if we got people from Brooklyn Center, Brooklyn Park on there, and they're being elected by our people, then they might actually look out for us as opposed to looking out for, this whole one world thing. I don't like Big Brother. I don't like the Met Council. I don't like that they're telling us whether or not Kathy here wants to build a. They're all just whether you can put vegetable stand in your yard, whether or not you can irrigate your garden. This is the kind of stuff that the Big Brother people are doing. They're also controlling your development. They're saying if you want to hook up to our sewer system, there's a whole bunch of rules that come with that. And then I also would as far as the Met Council, would want to make sure that we deal with the transit, deal with the other things, because there are a bunch of federal funding that come to the Met Council because we have an organization like that. We definitely need to make sure that we have that so that we're getting the federal funding and stuff for those functions. So we got to be careful not to just totally throw the baby out with the bathwater, but get the control back locally.
Thank you. I think you touched on the answer to this question that's coming in. Give you another go at it. Do you support an increase in the gas tax?
Well, I don't support the idea of raising taxes unless there's a really good reason for it. And I basically think we don't have a revenue problem, that we got a spending problem. I don't believe that basically every time there's a problem, every time a problem comes up, they're like, we got to spend money on it, and you can't take it from anywhere else. So we basically have to go back to David over here and say, hey, David, you got to get your wallet out and give me some more money. And really, to me, it's there's all kinds of waste, there's all kinds of fraud, there's all kinds of inefficiencies. They're doing all kinds of stuff to hurt people as far as over-regulating them, telling my uncle, that you can't cut down trees or whatever, and there's all kinds of crazy stuff. And what this is doing is it's repressing growth, it's hurting people, and I think it's really important to be just looking out for the folks.
Okay, thank you. Unless there are other questions from the audience, that completes this segment of the forum. And we'll now go to Robert's closing statement with 60-second max.
60-second max. Okay. Anyway, I wanted to thank you guys again. Thanks, Bob, for hosting. You did a really good job. And thanks for the North Metro Mayors Association and the Twin West Chamber of Commerce for hosting this event. I really appreciated it. It was a really good event. And we have a lot of areas that in the House. One of the things that people, when they're running for House, is real competitive, and they're always talking like, we're out there fighting with each other, and we're having this ugly battle. Realistically, when you come right down to it, for the most part, they get along. I think Mike Nelson will tell you that they generally speaking don't fight all the time. 90% of the time, they probably agree on a lot of stuff. And we basically need to get people out there to fight for the local folks, to fight for us. And I'm asking for your vote for Minnesota State House in November.
Thank you. That brings us to the close of this candidate forum for the State House of Representatives. We'd like to thank Mr. Marvin, the audience, the cable TV staff, the Twin West Chamber, and the City of Brooklyn Park for hosting this forum. Please remember to vote on Tuesday, November 6th, if you don't vote early. We will have a short break now before continuing with the discussion on District 40A. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Started. Good evening and welcome to the North Metro Mayors Association Brooklyn Park, Brooklyn Center Legislative Candidate Forum. Thank you all for joining us tonight. My name is Bob Benke. I'm a former mayor of the city of New Brighton and former board member for the association. Presently, I serve the association as Director of Research and Advocacy Services. The North Metro Mayors Association was created in 1987 as a nonpartisan organization advocating for issues and opportunities of importance to northern suburbs and the Twin Cities. I'd also like to thank the Twin West Chamber of Commerce for partnering with us on today's forum. Our goal in sponsoring tonight's candidate forum for House Districts 40A and 40B is to provide citizens with the opportunity to learn about the candidates' ideas and positions on issues that we think are important to the future of our communities. For tonight's forum, we'll pose 5 prepared questions after opening statements. Responses will be in rotating order with set time limits. I note that these limits are maximums and not minimums. We regret we cannot cover all issues of interest tonight due to time constraints. We will focus on city and state governance, transportation, and finance questions. We'll expect it to be more forums where other issues will be addressed. We will solicit questions from the audience. We'll use as many of those as time permits. Please write your questions on the cards that are available from association staff in the audience, and they'll bring them up to me. Those questions will be addressed to each candidate, so please refrain from asking for responses for a specific candidate. I'm pleased to introduce our next candidates with us tonight for House District 48, incumbent Representative Michael Nelson and challenger David True. Welcome, gentlemen. Thank you for being here.
Thank you.
We'll start now with our opening statements. Mike will go first.
Well, hello. I'm Michael Nelson, and again, I want to thank the League and the North Metro Mayor, or not the League, but the Chamber of Commerce and the North Metro Mayors for holding this forum. I also wanted to give a shout out tonight. It's September 11th, and it's the 17th anniversary of 9/11, and give a shout out to all the first responders out there, the police, the fire, and the EMTs that keep us safe in our communities. I also want to thank the residents of Brooklyn Park for allowing me the honor and privilege of serving them in the Minnesota legislature. This is my home. I grew up here. I've lived in Brooklyn Park and Brooklyn Center most of my life, graduating from Park Center High School and Hennepin Technical College. I participated with my sons in Brooklyn Park youth sports and served as a local Boy Scout leader. I have also been active in my Carpenters Union, serving in many leadership positions. In the legislature, I've served on many committees, most recently serving as the lead on the Government Operations and Elections Committee. In this role, I worked across the aisle to pass common sense election reforms to save money for our local governments while making voting easier for all citizens. The integrity and ease of our election systems is paramount to maintaining the trust in our government at all levels. I will continue to work on these and other issues that are important to all of us. Thank you.
Thank you. Next, we'll have...
All right, hello. I am David True. I want to thank the North Metro's Mayor Association and Twin West for hosting this forum and giving Mike and I the opportunity to address the residents of Brooklyn Park and answer some of their questions. I have lived in Brooklyn Park for 12 years. I have worked in the construction industry for 27 years. I have actively volunteered at my church and served on the PTO board at my children's school. Currently, I'm one of their football coaches. I have been married for 19 years and have 4 children. I've decided to run for state representative because I believe there are issues that we are currently facing our community that have gone unaddressed. Even though my job would be at the state level as a representative from Brooklyn Park, I should be an extension of Brooklyn Park and of the City Council, helping the community here first. Also, being a business owner myself, I feel I could help swing favorable businesses to our city. I truly know and believe that Brooklyn Park is a wonderful place to raise a family. Thank you.
Thank you. We'll now go to our prepared questions. This will be done in rotating order with a rebuttal opportunity. There's a 2-minute time limit for the answer to the question, and after each candidate has answered, there will be a rebuttal opportunity of 45 seconds time limit. First question will go to David. The question is, what are the top 1 or 2 issues you hear about while campaigning? And if elected, what would you do to work in a collaborative way to address those issues?
Okay, after speaking with several people in the neighborhoods, you can really feel their love for our community. What appears to matter most to them is their safety and their taxes. They want their money. Lately, there has been a lot of petty crimes, from bikes being stolen to cars being broken into. In time, this escalates to homes being burglarized. The neighbor behind me, his home was broken in last year. First, I would follow up with the police department to consider the options of adding a few temporary bike patrol officers if in the higher crime areas, that they may develop better rapport with residents and show a presence to help detour would-be criminals. Second, if there is a funding issue, then I would address the city council, and if they cannot afford the extra officers, I would check with the Minnesota House to see if there are any appropriations that they could help our police department. As far as taxes, I say let's lower them. It would boost our economy and benefit our city. I would work with the legislators and try to come up with reasonable tax reductions that would spur growth. I am open to any other ways and means of achieving this, and will reach across the aisle to help do this. Thank you.
Thank you. Representative Nelson, same question.
As I've been going door knocking and talking to people, public safety, again, is also one of the things that's always on the top of people's minds. We see reports of crime from all over our region, and sometimes the perception is it's always happening in our own backyard. Even though some of the numbers from the police department and from the city is that crime is going down in our area. But by providing our cities the resources, which we can, at the state level, we do through local government aid, we can properly fund our police and fire departments, and this is important. The other thing that I've been hearing lately is about the cost of housing and the concern for affordable housing. A lot of my neighbors and a lot of our people my age, our kids can't afford houses, they can't afford the rents, they're going up, and the housing values, the cost of them is going up. And rising housing values are not a bad thing, because that means the people that own homes, that the investment they've made in those houses that is going up. But it makes it difficult for newcomers, for the first-time buyers, to get into them. But a large part of this comes from the problem is most people's wages have not kept up with the cost of the houses going up. Their wages haven't been going up to keep track. And so we need to make sure we work on getting training for people so they can good-paying jobs, so they can afford to pay for their rents and pay for their house payments.
Thank you. Now we have an opportunity for rebuttal, if desired, starting with David.
Actually, I have no comment. I agree with most of what he said. The crime has gone down somewhat, but there are spikes in several neighborhoods, and where, that needs to be focused on. And that's, one of the reasons why I said, have local, bike patrol officers, because that could, get in there and target that one area, and only do it a temporary season and move on to another area.
No rebuttal.
Okay. We'll move on to question number 2 then. Both parties agree that increased funding is needed for road and transit system improvements. How would you propose those funds be raised? We'll start with Representative Nelson.
Well, traditionally, we've relied on the gas tax, which is a user fee that is constitutionally dedicated to roads and bridges, and that's what we've used to fund our roads. We've also dedicated portions of the sales tax from new car sales and leased vehicles. And a portion of those leased vehicles also has been dedicated to fund transit in our area. There are also portions of our local property taxes that goes to fund roads at the county level and at the city level. And while it may not be popular, I do support raising the gas tax. And the reason I do is because that is constitutionally dedicated to roads and bridges and can't be spent other places. Where other sales taxes and other taxes that that have been put over towards funding roads, in times of deficit, and the state will have deficits again at some point in time, those can be by legislation switched from roads and from funding roads to other issues that are necessary in the state, like local government aid and whatnot. So this is, like I said, this is why I support the gas tax, because it is constitutionally dedicated to roads, and it can't go elsewhere, even though there's a perception with some people that try and say that it is siphoned out for other things. It is not. It goes to roads and bridges.
Thank you. David?
Well, interesting.
Same question.
Yeah. The Highway Trust Fund is generated by the federal gas tax, which pays for our bridges, roads, and repairs. The light rail takes millions of dollars out of this fund to accommodate 2% of the populace, and it has not diverted the congestion off the roads as it was designed to do. So first, I would stop the money being diverted to light rail from the Highway Trust Fund. Second, get MnDOT to pick up the pace on needed road repairs, since they would have their full funding back. Third, find another funding source for light rail, maybe even prioritize it. Light rail has many flaws, one being several of the stations people can get on without purchasing a ticket. Our light rail is losing money due to this free access design of these stations. We need to redesign the stations to a closed system to increase revenue from customers. In Atlanta, the rail system is called MARTA, and there is no way you can get on without buying a ticket. We need to view their system and replicate it to help make up the shortfall in our area. Thank you.
Thank you. Now is an opportunity for a rebuttal.
One thing I want to point out is I think there's a confusion here about the state's highway user fund and the federal highway user fund. The state highway user fund is none of the dollars from our state highway fund go to pay for roads, or go to pay for transit. Federal dollars do come in from the federal gas tax, but the state gas tax does not go, not a penny of it goes to transit. And that's a misnomer. Again, that's a misperception that's out there, and it's something that people want to continue to propagate. As far as getting better ways of making sure people that are riding the light rail or riding their transit systems are paying, I'm all for that, and we'll work side by side with people at the state to make sure that happens.
Further comment?
I would not raise the gas tax. It's already high enough. Thank you.
All right. Let's go on then to the next question. What should be the role of the Metropolitan Council in guiding policy development in the North Metro area? And we'll start with David.
None. Each city should be responsible for their own development. The reason why? The closest form of representation on a local level is the elected members on the city council. They know the community needs and wants the best. More so, I would disband the Met Council or revert it back to its original purpose, with it overseeing the development and maintenance of the city sewer system.
Michael?
The Met Council was set up originally to deal with metropolitan issues that cross city lines. Just like you can't build a road in front of my house and then have my neighbor build a different road, some things like highways and sewer systems have to be done on a metro-wide, a region-wide basis, because it makes more sense fiscally and it just makes more common sense. The Met Council has been assigned that task and has also been assigned the task of long-term planning for our region over the years. And this causes heartburn in many people. There have been many proposals for changes in the past for changes to the structure of the council, but it does not eliminate the need for some of the long-term and short-term planning, regional planning that needs to go on. And with the latest plan that goes on, those are long-term plans that they look out 20 years, 30 years, 40 years in the future, and it's just, this is what we think we're going to do, and it helps them guide where we're going to spend money. If every city did their own development and all of a sudden the Met Council or a local state or regional had to come up and pay for all that increase in sewer service, that would be very expensive, and by not planning for it. By having a regional planning agency and helping plan for that, some of that stuff, it helps them lay the money out and do it in a more fiscally responsible manner.
Thank you. Rebuttal?
Yes. I do agree that the sewer system needs a huge, massive plan, That's why I was saying that revert Met Council back to its original form, overseeing the construction and maintenance of the sewer systems, but only that. Like said in the previous session, break up Met Council into individual groups, because there's 4 main groups that they govern, and have them in each individual body. But they're too large and too controlling, have a stronger governance over city councils than what they should.
Further comment?
No comment.
All right. Let's go on then to the next question. Minnesota's business property taxes are among the highest in the nation. What would you do at the legislature to address this issue? We'll start with Representative Nelson.
Well, business property taxes are part of the puzzle that we use to fund our government service throughout our state. We need to be aware that when we lower one tax, someone else has to pay more, or we have to cut to maintain the services we have, or we have to cut services. We always need to weigh the taxes we levy and who pays them with the services we demand: police, fire, snow plowing, and the like. In local governments, the local cities, a lot of their taxes come from property taxes and business property taxes. And so that's what funds our local police, our local fire, and other services that are provided at the local area. So to say we cut this tax or that tax without looking at whose taxes are going up or down is something we have to do as a whole. We can't just look at one piece and say, we're going to pick this piece out and we're going to lower these, and then it just shifts the burden to somebody else. So that's where I stand on that.
Okay, I'm at a slight disadvantage since I'm not on the finance board, or I'm not in the organization right now, the legislature. But at the first step to reduce property taxes, I would find ways to cut spending in other areas. What areas of our current budget can be better used to help citizens in Minnesota? Additionally, I believe that we need to have more fiscal discipline in our spending. We need to weigh the benefit of a program or allocation before throwing the money at it. Finally, I feel that the citizens need to hold our Minnesota state government more responsible in how we spend our dollars. Since citizens have to foot the bill, they need to have a greater voice on what and where we are spending money. And if we increase spending, if we're able to spur growth into our local area, that increases revenue, so we don't have to raise taxes.
Thank you. Rebuttal? Okay. We'll go then to our 5th question. Your community is part of not just a regional or national marketplace, but a global one that competes for business and talent on a global basis. What policies would you support to help retain and attract businesses and talent to the region? We'll start with David.
Okay. My priority would be to help retain and create more jobs for people here in the United States. In the last 2 years, manufacturing jobs in the United States have increased. What kind of manufacturing jobs could we bring to Minnesota to help the families here locally? Secondly, I would focus on options available to students at the high school level. Right now, many companies are struggling to find workers in the IT industry and having to ship these jobs overseas. What training could we start offering our students in high school that could help keep the jobs here? What other high school programs would help better prepare our students for the workforce after high school? I believe giving corporation tax breaks over a set time once they move to Minnesota is also a way to attract industry. In New York, new startup businesses or companies moving into New York can operate tax-free for 10 years. These businesses are required to partner with schools and universities in their area, as well as create new jobs and contribute to economic growth in the community.
Thank you. Representative Nelson?
Well, thank you. And on this question, one of the things that we as a state have prided ourselves in the past is a strong, educated workforce. And that's what businesses are looking for. We need to continue to invest in our school systems, both K-12 and higher ed, so that we have the workers that attract businesses, and we have the workers that businesses need. And it's not always just college. There's a lot of trade schools. there's a lot of those jobs that are going wanting because companies can't find the workers that are trained to do the work. Not many people are moving here for our warm winters. So we need to make sure that our workforce is capable and does the job and can do a good job, and that comes from training and education. So we need to make sure we invest more in that, and that'll help us attract businesses here.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
Any rebuttal?
No, I agree.
All right. That is the end of our prepared statements. We do have a couple audience questions. Are there any other questions? Here comes one. Thank you. And this question will go first to Michael. Black Lives Matter was coined out of the desperate disappointment of police killings on blacks in this country. What would you propose to state legislature to address this issue? I think we could generalize that in terms of the racial issues that are facing our country and our state and our metropolitan region. Michael?
That's a real tough question, and it's part of the problem with some of the policing is shortage of police officers in some of the areas, and instead of being able to do community policing where they get to know their neighbors, get to know the people that live in the communities, they're rushing from this emergency to that emergency to this emergency, and that has caused some of the issues with reactions and the improper training that have been given to police forces around here. We need to make sure that we have the proper funding, that so our cities can have enough police officers on, so that they're adequately covered, so that the police can do the old-fashioned where they used to have the beat cop, where they'd walk down the street and they knew everyone that lived on the block. I think that would go a long way for releasing some of these tensions. And we also need to, again, work on making sure that our kids get educated. There's a huge gap in the education where minority students and white students, the gap in their achievement gap, we need to make sure we close that so that all students graduating get the proper education so they can get good paying jobs and they have a future.
Can you read the question one more time?
Black Lives Matter was coined out of the disproportional police killings of blacks in this country. What would you propose to the state legislature to address this issue?
I object to this kind of question. This is a pretty negative question.
The question's been asked, and we'll give the candidate an opportunity to respond.
Okay. Black Lives Matter, I think their main underlying point that they have is they just want to be heard and they want to be recognized, and that their issues are substance, and we need to create a forum, so that they can express their views, and that we can come to terms and hear them, listen to them, and give their ideas, logical thought. I really feel like that, if we met that, and as long as it doesn't impede on other people's rights, I think it's great to hear other people's viewpoints and other cultures' viewpoints and other groups, whether I'm in favor with them or not. They have a right. It's their right to speak up and state their stance.
Any rebuttal?
No.
Okay. We'll move on then to another question. Do you support reform that would have locally elected officials serving on the Metro Council? If not, what reforms would you propose? And this one we will go to David first.
No, I definitely agree. If we can't disband Met Council, the members are elected not by the population, but by the governor. They're appointed by the governor. So I would have the regional election of each Met Council member, so that they're from our district, and they would have to campaign so we know who they are, so we can elect those that represents our views on the Met Council.
Further question or comment?
No, the reforms of the Met Council, we need to have a regional, because of the size of our region, and like I said, the things that we need to do, sewer, transit, and a lot of other big issues that we need to have planning across the region. We need to have a Met Council. There have been many different proposals from it. Number one, electing Met Council, to having a combination of appointed and having locally elected officials serve on the Met Council, and those have been debated. Some of them have been debated, and we haven't come up at the legislature with a reform that we can get past the governor. When Governor Plenty was there, and they tried to pass some changes to that, he vetoed them. Governor Dayton has done the same thing. So, like I said, we need to come up with a way that, if we're going to reform them, that we can get agreement from all sides to move forward with. But like I said, there has been proposals of elected officials, but those would be huge. Those would almost be the size of congressional districts, because they'd cross many state lines and city lines the way that it is now. So there's a lot of concern, and it's a lot of people looking at it, and we've looked at it at the state before. So I'm not sure where I'm going to come down on it.
Okay. Any rebuttal?
No.
All right. That's the end of our questions for this forum. We'll now go to closing statements of our candidates in the reverse order of our opening statements. So we will go to closing statement first from David.
Okay. In the coming weeks, I hope to meet you while canvassing the area. But in the meantime, do not hesitate to get in contact with me. I enjoy hearing your concerns and issues and what matters to you. And I would appreciate your vote November 6th. And thank you, Twin West and North Metro Mayors Association.
Thank you. Representative Nelson.
Well, again, I thanks the Twin West Chamber and the North Metro Mayors Association. It's hard to say. As we wind down this upcoming election season, we need to make sure we don't get caught up in a lot of the hoopla that's locally and nationally that's going on out there. Good jobs that pay livable wages and a strong education system that prepares our children and grandchildren to become contributing members of society are still the most important issues to all of us. I will continue to work across the aisle to make sure we continue to invest in good schools for our children, a comprehensive transportation system that works for everyone. That includes good roads and quality public transit so we can get to our jobs, so we can all get to our jobs, shopping, recreation, and religious institutions of our choice. The public safety so we can feel safe in our homes and in our community. There are not easy answers to these issues, but if we all work together, we can come up with solutions that make our community stronger. It has been my honor to serve you in the Minnesota legislature, and I ask for your vote on November 6th.
Thank you. That brings us to the close of this candidate forum for the State House of Representatives. We'd like to thank the candidates, the audience, the cable TV staff, the Twin West Chamber, and the City of Brooklyn Park for hosting this forum. Please remember to vote on or before Tuesday, November 6th. Thank you.